All right, so we picked up last time when we were talking about complaints, and so we think of this right as a reactive measure to any kind of police misconduct. Reason for that, right, is that it doesn't prevent anything, right? It's in response to like the way like an interaction occurred. So there really isn't anything like proactive about it. It isn't necessarily preventative, other than like someone might file a complaint, if I got like an issue or problem, right? But it's very reactive. We'll also talk about like another one, right? With another reactive one, and that's the case of like a civil suit or settlement, right? So in this particular case, right, like if you have like a beef with an officer, you can, file a civil lawsuit. So if you feel like they, detained you for an inappropriate reason, or that there was unlawful use of force, or if they're, were searched incorrectly, right? You can choose to sue an officer, right? And a lot of times, right, people, will often critique that as, people were allowed to sue officers, or, if they were, targeted for like legal action, right? That this would lead to misconduct, right? And so what ends up happening, right, is that if you are leading someone to misconduct, right, if you are focusing on this, right, the goal being is that the, financial cost, both in terms of like, say, a settlement or legal fees, is a way to exact retribution, right? It can't undo what may have happened, right? But if we, make police officers, feel like the pain of, what's going on, right, then they are going to be less likely to do this behavior again, right? So, in some ways, right, if you think about like from a deterrence theory perspective, right, it's intended to be a specific deterrent to an individual officer, and also a general deterrent to other police. The problem with this, right, is that more often than not, this is not incredibly effective in terms of like preventing officer misbehavior, right? And that really lies in like the motivation, right? Because if you were thinking about this from a standpoint, right? Like if I feel like I was wrong by something, right? If in a civil suit, I can't really request that an officer gets fired, although a police department may choose to do that. But in a civil suit, excuse me, what I'm aiming to do, right, is to seek damages for wrongdoing or perceived wrongdoing. And as typically the case, right, if we're seeking damages, right, typically, because like there is a financial component to this, right, we want more money. And so we go to sources with more cash. So in this particular case, then what ends up happening, and actually this is pretty often in like in settlement cases, right, is that people end up suing a police department because they are the ones that are responsible for the training and the conduct of the officer and their supervision and oversight, right? And they also have the most money, right? They can, have like these huge insurance funds, right, that pay out for a police department. It is sometimes like in a big pool of cash. Oh, why I'm yawning. It's 3 in the afternoon. Um, you know, and so they end up having a big pool of cash, right? And so if you're looking to get this right, the strategy is to get more money, which means that you are divorced from the officer. So the officer actually, like in a lot of different ways, right? The officer may be like unaware of the civil case or proceedings that are happening. It may not be included in that unless they need like a specific testimony or something like that. But what ends up happening is that because they're unaware, right? This may not be tied to any kind of discipline, and what can happen, right, is that uh, any kind of change or behavior, right, related to this, right, is lost. So there's like a lost deterrent effect because we're focused on the wrong person, or then right because we're focused on getting the money out of it. What ends up happening though, right, is that police departments, if there's a lot of civil suits, right, will have an increase in fine, like in their insurance, and city budgets actually like have to like put away like tons of crazy money to like pay out settlements in a given year, right? Like we're talking like millions of dollars just for settlement payouts. That is just to handle like misconduct behavior of officers like that, which is like pretty interesting, right? Is that they're willing to have all this money set aside to pay out, for like misconduct kind of stuff, because some of these, maybe as little as like a few $1,000s, right? To some of these, depending on the extent of them, right, could be like upwards of like $50 million, right? So, all that depends on like the case proceedings, what the department's willing to pay out and things like that. But it's pretty astounding that this amount of money is like held out just for police departments to make up for like wrongdoing of their officers. Okay, so we'll pause here.